What on earth is my husband doing? Today is the big day, our daughter Emily's wedding. Almost all the guests have gathered. Despite saying he'd come later, it's unbelievable that her father, Michael, hasn't shown up just before the ceremony. I've called him several times already. Finally, he answered.
Finally! Where are you now?
Me? I'm on a trip with my ex-wife. I was speechless. Of all the days, he chooses today to pull such an awful stunt. He told me to just make some excuse to the relatives and hung up. It felt like he had tainted our precious daughter Emily's special day, and I felt terrible. A week after the wedding, Michael called me. He was very angry, probably because I had been ignoring him.
Hey! Where the hell are you now?
Why should I have to tell you that? Furious at my response, Michael lost it. He was shouting incoherently. It was only natural that he'd lost his composure to this extent. After all, I had razed his house to the ground. My name is Kelly. I'm 52 years old. I work part-time at a grocery store. Being a modest and quiet type, I was single until I was 30. I thought I'd probably never get a chance to marry, being as introverted as I was. Back in my youth, I lived my life looking downwards, engulfed in such negative thoughts. Michael was introduced to me by a friend of my late mother. One day, out of the blue, she contacted me, insisting I meet him. I agreed to meet just once and was surprised to see he had brought along a child.
Wait, you didn't know?
That lady, she's a bit scatterbrained. Michael was holding a baby girl about a year old. Her name was Emily. When Emily suddenly started crying, she stopped as soon as I took her in my arms. Michael's previous wife was quite fickle, having left him after finding another man. Emily needed a mother. I agreed to become her mother at Michael's request. The early days of our marriage were definitely happy. Busy with taking care of Emily and work, the days flew by. We lived in my house at the time. A house took over from my father Tom. It was a bit old but a cherished home with a garden. Life was hectic, juggling home, work, and the daycare. I think Emily was about 5 years old when I started noticing a change in Michael's once quiet demeanor. He began to disregard my requests and started drifting into bad habits.
Cut it out! If you've got time to drink, help out with Emily or around the house. Stop nagging. It's a woman's job to take care of another woman. Household chores have always been women's work.
Michael ignored our needs. He would go out drinking every weekend and come home in the early morning. Eventually, he even started smoking again.
Come on. The house is going to smell of smoke, right? It's not good for Emily, so please don't smoke. Stop fussing over a bit of smoke. Really, you're such a nag.
Too much arguing would make Emily cry. When Michael started smoking, Emily and I had to retreat to another room. This was my own house, yet why did we have to be the ones to escape? The house quickly filled with the smell of tobacco, and I was frustrated beyond belief. Unable to stand it any longer, I finally decided to consult my father.
So, the house smells of tobacco, and things with Michael are getting worse. I don't know what to do. Sorry to bring up our marital issues.
Thank you for telling me. Invite Michael over. I'll talk to him too. Michael was quite nervous when we visited my father's home together. My father was a wealthy man with influence in many areas at that time. Michael was well aware of this and was visibly shaken by the summons. Even his company's executives warned him not to upset my father. Although it's not right to meddle in a couple's affairs, my father's voice was grave.
You should really quit smoking, Michael. It's not good for your health, and certainly not for Kelly and Emily. Could you please not make my daughter so sad?
All right. I'm sorry. After being scolded by her father, Michael sincerely admitted his faults. He genuinely apologized to me and our daughter Emily, and the atmosphere softened. But when we got back home, everything was back to normal. Now he sneaks around to smoke. Moreover, Michael started visiting my father alone, claiming they needed to discuss men's business about a project he wanted to pursue. I felt uneasy, but since my father said nothing, I just let it be. Just when Emily became a junior high school student, I discovered Michael's affair. Moreover, after hiring a detective, it appeared that the other woman was his ex-wife, Sharon. Starting a relationship again with a woman he was supposed to have divorced, what kind of nerve is that? Her name is Sharon. Sharon is quite beautiful. I wondered why he had divorced such a beauty. Anyway, I didn't want our sensitive daughter to suffer because of her parents' relationships. I waited for a moment alone with Michael to show him the photos of his affair and sternly warned him. The affair is already uncovered, you know? And it seems the other woman is your ex-wife.
You took these secretly? You went to such lengths?
Don't laugh. I'm serious. Please, stop doing this.
Tell her, not me. She keeps insisting on getting back together. Everyone. Why are all the women around me so selfish?
Angry, Michael left despite my attempts to stop him. It felt like he was just pretending to be angry to dodge the issue. I realized I needed to investigate further how his relationship with Sharon rekindled. This situation is absolutely not right. Normally, shouldn't he distance himself from his ex-wife considering his current family? I am his partner now. I wish he would act with me and Emily as his priorities. I made this appeal to him. But every time we talked, he just looked annoyed. He wouldn't take me seriously. Gradually, I began to resent him and our marriage grew cold. Whenever I asked him to stop the affair, he'd retort, "Tell her." Thinking there was no end to this, I resolved to meet Sharon myself. I sent a letter to the address I had confirmed through the detective agency and called her to a cafe. The impact of meeting Sharon for the first time is unforgettable. The moment she saw me, she smirked triumphantly, as if to say she was far superior as a woman. "What do you want to talk about?" "I'm quite busy, so please make it quick." "Yes, you seem busy. Must be hard managing so many men at once. I'd like to learn your scheduling secrets." "What? You called me here to fight? If that's what you want, I'm game." Her response took me by surprise. Maybe because she looked down on me at our first contact. Uncharacteristically, I snapped back with a sarcastic remark. This wasn't right. I came here to have a rational discussion. Regaining my composure, I apologized to Sharon for my rude remarks. "I'm sorry. That was not right of me. I didn't mean it. Please, just don't see my husband anymore. It's not good for Emily's upbringing." "Oh, that's what this is about. Well then, how about you prepare $50,000 as a severance payment?"
Severance payment? Why should I be the one to pay that?
Aren't you the daughter of a wealthy family? Just cough it up. Oh, you can't? Wasn't this about Emily's education? No? Was your love for your daughter just lip service? What a spiteful woman. I didn't want to be lectured about love by someone who had abandoned her daughter like she did. Sharon's attitude seemed to reflect jealousy and anger towards me, a wealthy heiress. Her troubled past, being abandoned by her delinquent parents and shuffled among relatives, was evident. Ultimately, our discussion led nowhere. Sharon left without even paying for her coffee. When I told Michael about meeting Sharon, he simply said, "Oh, really?" I was furious. From around the time I met Sharon at the cafe, strange things began happening at home. Items frequently went missing. My clothes, bags, shoes, and jewelry were disappearing. Thinking this was odd, I confronted Michael and he replied, "I just borrowed them."
How can you just borrow them without asking? What did you do with them? Did you lend them to some other woman, perhaps Sharon?
What? That doesn't matter. It's none of your business.
It is my business. Imagine how I feel having my things borrowed without permission.
What happened to the borrowed items afterward? Unfortunately, the missing items never returned. I even spotted the same items in a marketplace once. Despite my persistent questioning, my husband claimed he didn't know or remember, eventually getting angry. I decided to store my belongings in locked cabinets, drawers, and closets. Speaking of keys, the key to the cottage had also mysteriously disappeared. It was the key to the cottage I used occasionally during my single days, borrowed from my father. When I confronted my husband, he reported that he had been using it as a getaway. The thought that it might have been used as a replacement for a hotel made me shiver. Our marriage continued to drift apart. The only thing keeping us connected was our daughter, Emily, who was finally getting married. Her fiancé was from the same university as her, 3 years older than her. He was already working and had been assigned a job transfer far away. He had asked Emily to marry him and move with him during their relationship. After graduating from university, Emily wanted to have the wedding immediately, and I sincerely congratulated her.
Emily, congratulations! I'm so happy for you.
Thanks, Mom. Everything is thanks to you. I'm really sorry. You've been through so much because of Dad. But you've always endured it for me. I know everything. That's why I'm so grateful. Emily. It's okay. This isn't something you should worry about. This is an issue between your father and me. Just focus on finishing your studies and have a happy marriage, okay?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mom. To be honest, I regret marrying my husband. But meeting my daughter was different. I'm thrilled to be her mother. It feels like a chapter will close when she builds her own happy family. I've decided to divorce my husband. These were my thoughts behind the scenes of my daughter's marriage talks. Later, Emily graduated from university as planned. She intended to support her husband as a homemaker after marriage. On the wedding day, Emily and I entered the venue first. Dressed in a wedding gown and made up beautifully, she looked stunning. I was moved to tears just looking at her. I couldn't wait for the ceremony to start. But then, what on earth was my husband doing? He had said he would come later, but he had not shown up at the venue even just before the ceremony was about to begin. I called him dozens of times on my phone right before the opening. Finally, my husband answered the call.
I finally got through. Where are you now?
Me?
I'm on a trip with my ex-wife.
I was speechless. What a terrible thing to do on such a day. On a trip with his ex-wife? How could you say that so blatantly? I felt my head boiling with rage.
Just make some excuse to the relatives and cover for me.
What? Do you realize? It's your daughter's wedding.
I know.
Tell Emily congratulations for me, won't you?
What a selfish man. The worst. I almost smashed my phone to the floor. But I couldn't lose my composure. It was my daughter's wedding. I lied that my husband couldn't come due to a sudden emergency and managed to get through it. I kept a calm smile, but inside, I was storming with anger towards my husband. A week after the ceremony, I received a call from my husband for the first time in a while. I had been ignoring him because it was annoying, but he kept calling persistently. It was a barrage of calls. Reluctantly, I answered, and as expected, he was very angry.
I finally got through. Where are you right now?
Why should I have to tell you that? It doesn't concern you.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. I am your husband, aren't I?
He arrogantly snapped, completely frenzied. His voice was so strained it was barely audible. But it was somewhat expected. After all, I had leveled his house.
Coming back to no house, how could you possibly do that? What did you do with it?
I just demolished it because it was old. Of course, I consulted with your father first. A contractor friend cleared it in 2 days. I'm thinking of putting that land on the market.
What about my stuff? My clothes and everything else? Where did all that go? You didn't just throw them away or sell them, did you? Because that would be unforgivable.
Considering you've been taking people's things without permission and lending or selling them, you're one to talk, right?
But don't worry, all your belongings are safely stored somewhere.
Relieved, my husband sighed heavily. It seems he was very worried about what had happened to his belongings. He was probably anxious that I might have disposed of them. Tell me where it's kept, give it back now, he demanded, barking more than asking. Everything was going according to plan.
If you want to know, you'll have to divorce me first. What? Divorce? Are you fine with Emily growing up with just one parent?
Appalling.
How long are you planning on using that excuse? Emily is already an adult.
Trying to tie me down now by bringing up our child is absurd. Of course, Emily knows that I've been considering divorce. I've discussed it with her father as well. There's no need to hesitate in kicking this man out of my life.
Accept the divorce first. Then we'll talk. If you really dislike that idea, you will lose all your precious belongings. Do you still want to remain married to me that badly? Are you crazy? Who would want to be with a woman like you?
I thought so.
Sharon is prettier, isn't she? So, what will it be? Will you accept the divorce, or would you rather throw everything away? I need you to decide quickly. Fine. If it's divorce you want, it's divorce you'll get.
My husband must have been vaguely thinking about my father's inheritance. Staying married to me might someday make him very rich. But my father is still very healthy. He looks like he could live to be 100. Who knows when that someday will come, and our relationship is only getting worse. He must have made his decision after weighing various considerations about gains, losses, and future expectations.
I'll sign the divorce papers or anything. Where are you living now? I'll come to you.
Tell you my address? I can't do that.
What if you show up uninvited or start stalking me? I'll contact you later about when and where we can meet. Don't get all high and mighty. Who do you think you are, Kelly? You know what, just remember this. You might want to think about whether you're really in a position to be raising your voice. Do you even understand how angry I am after all the unilateral decisions you've made so far?
He had taken too many liberties, ignoring my feelings entirely. As a result, our relationship was irreparably damaged. I had tried to reconcile for the sake of our daughter, but he repeatedly pushed me away. He and his still-connected ex-wife deserved some form of retribution. A few days later, I called my husband and told him to bring his ex-wife and come to my parents' house. When they arrived on the appointed day, both my husband and his ex-wife looked suspicious. Like stray cats who had unwittingly wandered into someone else's territory. They were lost, scared, and confused. They should have acted more confidently. But perhaps it was too much for them. Before them sat my father, looking grim as if he were about to unleash thunder. The fear was palpable on Sharon's face as she met my father for the first time.
Before we discuss the divorce, there are a few things I need to clarify. Michael, you've been using our family cottage without permission, haven't you? Along with Sharon here, right? Well, I used it, but not without permission, right? Kelly knew too, didn't she? Don't act as if I had given my consent. You just took the keys and used it, informing me unilaterally afterward, didn't you? You two have been trashing our cottage, haven't you? Never cleaning up after yourselves? Well, I plan to clean up the next time we used it.
When I was contacted by the cottage management company about the disarray, I was shocked. My husband and his ex-wife had left the place a total mess, with all kinds of trash just strewn about. Clean up next time? That was clearly a lie. They probably thought it would be fine just to leave it for me or the management company to clean up.
Moreover, it seems that some equipment was damaged by objects hitting it, and the floors and tables are dirty with stains from drinks and food. I've also been told it smells strongly of tobacco overall. Did you smoke in that cottage? I had hung a valuable painting I bought when I was younger.
About that, Dad. It seems that the paintings you collected aren't hanging in the cottage anymore. These two seem to have sold them off at an online auction.
What? How could they do such a thing? After all the trouble I went through to collect them.
I was shocked when I found out. I couldn't believe that my husband and his ex-wife would go as far as to do that. The grief my father felt from having his precious painting collection sold off was profound. The fury in my eyes when I addressed my husband was palpable. He was at a loss for words.
What's this about? Did I give you those paintings at the cottage? I don't recall ever discussing that. Well, I'm so sorry. It was a moment of folly.
Return of the paintings or compensation for the damage. Payment for the repairs needed to restore the cottage to its previous state. All these costs will be billed to you, my father stated solemnly. What else could my husband do but nod? But my father's words didn't end there.
Michael, you received a loan from me, remember? Yes, about $50,000. You lent it to me.
What did you do with it?
Wasn't it supposed to be for a new business venture? I haven't heard any follow-up. It hasn't fizzled out, has it? Well,
my husband faltered, obviously struggling to say something. He was sweating profusely, unable to keep his gaze steady. Seeing my husband's pathetic state, my father sighed in exasperation.
Be honest. That business venture was a lie, wasn't it? You received the loan under false pretenses. If you didn't know, let me inform you that what you did could be considered fraud. No, that's not true. I didn't mean it like that. Was the business plan also a lie? Fraud is a serious crime, you know? You could face up to 10 years in prison. There are no fines, only mandatory labor if convicted. I'm so sorry. I lied.
Finally, my husband apologized. He must have realized that lies and excuses weren't going to work anymore. He admitted that the business plan was a fabrication. The loan he received was apparently used for something else. Used for something else?
What exactly did you spend it on? Well, this woman begged me, and I used it to pay off her debts. What? You used the money I entrusted to you for something like that? Hey! Traitor! You promised you wouldn't talk about that.
His ex-wife yelled. What can I do? My husband retorted. My father heaved a heavy sigh. I was too dismayed to speak. He had used the money I helped him borrow to pay off his ex-wife's debts? Unbelievable. How could someone be so irresponsible? Whether it's true or not, the ex-wife also had no right to blame my husband. They were both despicable. At that moment, the living room door quietly opened. It was my daughter, Emily. After I told her about today's discussion, she wanted to be involved. She had been listening to our exchange for a while and looked utterly disheartened. Seeing her, the ex-wife stood up gleefully.
Emily! You were here too! I wanted to see you! I'm your mother!
You're not my mother. I appreciate that you gave birth to me, but that's it. I refuse to be considered family by someone like you.
Emily! How can you speak to your biological mother like that?
That's because she's not my mother. And you. Skipping your daughter's wedding to go on a cheating trip with your ex-wife, don't act like a father. It was only natural for my daughter to be angry. She had already harbored resentment toward her father. This affair trip was just the breaking point for her. By now, both her father and his ex-wife were nothing but adversaries in her eyes.
Just so you know, my husband is the nephew of the chairman of the parent company where you work. He's very close and dear to him. The chairman's? Emily, why didn't you tell me something so important?
I thought I did. If you didn't listen, that's on you. But at this point, it doesn't matter. I plan to cut ties with you as a parent.
Emily, don't say that.
My daughter is well aware of how much my husband has tormented me. She has had just as many unpleasant experiences as I have. Her resentment towards her father is significant. She intends to tell her husband everything, and my husband turned pale.
Stop it! What if the chairman glares at me?
If he glares, so be it. You've done enough to deserve it, haven't you?
In my eyes, as a daughter, you're the worst as a person, a parent, and a man. Emily, stop that. Don't speak to your father like. Don't act like a mother. I will never acknowledge you two as my parents.
The many disgraceful acts of my husband will likely reach the chairman through my daughter's husband. And from the chairman to the president, and from the president to his immediate supervisor, impacting his reputation at work. My husband was already on the verge of tears. But it's too late for regrets. There's no stopping my daughter now. She then turned her sharp gaze to her birth mother.
Mom told me that you've been involved with other men besides my father. And not just one, many. You've been lying about your age and continuing those relationships, haven't you? Well, I won't say it's not true. Thinking that I share the same blood as someone like you makes living unbearable. Promise me you won't show your face to me ever again. Got it? Okay.
The ex-wife looked feeble. To her, my daughter was probably seen as a safety net for times of need. Her plans to lean on her if anything happened clearly backfired. My daughter despises her birth mother to the core. Whether it's her biological mother or not, being disliked ends it all. Seeing the disheartened ex-wife, I decided it was time to deliver her the final blow.
I'm going to inform your affair partner's spouses about your infidelity. Is that okay? What? Hey, stop. By what right do you do such a thing? If you dislike that, compensate for the damage you and my father have caused us. Split the costs with him. Me, split with Michael.
Why act surprised? Did she think she could escape the troubles alone? The unauthorized sale of items. The mess made at the cottage. And the emotional damage. The damage we suffered from my husband and his ex-wife was substantial. I declared my intent to hire a lawyer to detail the damages and demand compensation. As my husband signed the divorce papers, the ex-wife continued to sob miserably. Our divorce was finalized a few days later. I gave him the password to the storage where his belongings were kept and billed him for the usage period. How much of a deadbeat he was at home, a nuisance to his wife and child. His true nature reached the president through Emily's husband and the chairman, spreading rapidly within the company. Especially shocking to the employees was the fact that he went on a trip with his ex-wife on the day of his daughter's wedding. Unthinkable as a parent. Deeply flawed as a person. Such bad reputation circulated widely. If the employees were making a fuss, it was inevitable that the business partners heard as well. That company houses the worst kind of man. Rumors grew maliciously, cornering my ex-husband. He resigned half a year after our divorce due to the disdainful looks from those around him. Just moving to another company and starting anew wasn't an option. Given his age, re-employment wasn't easy. Despite applying to many places, he remained unemployed, time just passing by. He faced a lawsuit for damages from my father, and I demanded alimony. With no savings left. My ex-husband struggled financially, got caught shoplifting, and ended up in police custody multiple times. The ex-wife's life became miserable as well. She was jointly liable for the payments to my father and me. She failed in her attempts to get her affair partners to pay up. Moving too boldly, her infidelity was discovered by their partners. As a result, she faced forcing her to work even though she had been unemployed up to that point. She tried to leverage her looks in the nightlife industry, but it was tough. It wasn't an easy world for a woman in her 50s to jump into as a newcomer and survive. The strong-willed ex-wife caused trouble with the younger staff wherever she went and was eventually ostracized. In the end, she had no choice but to rely on her ex-husband, moving into his place to scrape by. One day, the two of them appeared before me as I was returning from work, pleading about how hard they were struggling.
We're working 2 to 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet.
I'm struggling too. I can't even afford to go to the hair salon anymore, nor can I buy new clothes.
Kelly, please help us. Just let us talk to your father. We get turned away at the gate. No one will listen to our new business idea.
As they should. What new business? Who would believe such a lie at this point?
My ex-husband passionately defended that it wasn't a lie. To me, it didn't matter. It was irrelevant. Even if his story was true, either my father nor I were interested in listening. I despise my ex-husband and don't even want to see his face. When I bluntly shared these thoughts, he burst into tears. The ex-wife had already been crying. It was pitiful to see grown adults sniveling in the street at dusk.
You've made your bed, now lie in it. Go back home. Both of you, never appear before me again.
I sharply dismissed them. Their lonely figures turned their backs to leave. Yet, I felt no sympathy for them. Instead, I thought it served them right. I hope they continue to regret their actions for a lifetime and experience the depths of debt-ridden life. Later, my daughter had a child. Now, she sends me pictures of my grandchild every day. While there's no blood relation, that child is undeniably precious to me. I intend to continue watching over my daughter and her family's happiness from a distance. Being entangled with such a worthless man was a waste of a part of my life. However, I am grateful that it led me to meet my daughter. For her sake, and for my grandchild's, I plan to keep living a healthy life, both mentally and physically. My name is Mirabelle Kirk, I'm 46 years old. Back when I was married, I went by the name Mirabelle Ivan, but now I'm divorced. I was Mirabelle Ivan 18 years ago, when I was 28. My then husband, Harry Ivan, was 30, and our daughter, Lisa Ivan, was just 5 years old. But during my marriage, I couldn't proudly say I was happy. Lisa was diagnosed with cancer, which caused a rift in our marriage. Why does my daughter have to have cancer? It's a disgrace that such a weak person comes from my family. It's your fault for not watching her diet more closely, leading to this. And to think she's gotten a terminal diagnosis, how poorly must you have raised her? There's no worse mother than you anywhere in the world. No matter how much I earn, it all goes to medical bills. While I don't even have time to enjoy myself, you're probably napping at home. My mom was right. We got a defective daughter-in-law and grandchild, and now we're isolated by the neighbors. It's all your fault. Don't think crying will help, I'm not falling for those cheap tricks. Harry would rant and leave the house. Whether he was going to work or to his mistress's place. I knew. Once Lisa was diagnosed with cancer, Harry quickly found another woman.
I work for Lisa too. What do you mean by weak person? Cancer can happen to anyone, you fool. Not only do you lack medical knowledge, but you also lack common sense. Just because you're a bit successful, you always have to make those snide remarks. It's so annoying, what a jerk.
Murmuring this, I got ready and headed to the office. That night, I was exhausted from work, but Harry didn't even prepare dinner. He was lounging on the sofa, laughing at the TV.
Hey, where have you been? Where's my dinner? Why didn't you prepare it? You've made me tired. Hurry up, you worthless wife.
When I silently started to prepare dinner, Harry unusually came over to me. We're getting a divorce. Actually, my beloved Mia is pregnant with my child, a healthy boy, at that. So, this is the end for us. Be thankful for the times we had, and sign this divorce paper. I wasn't even sad, I felt like the inevitable had finally arrived. After I calmly signed the divorce papers, Harry quickly packed his things and left the house. And so, 18 years ago, I was kicked out of the Ivan family and returned to my parents' house, the Kirks. And now, by chance, I ran into Harry again at a large shopping center. It had been 18 years, so when I saw Harry with a baby, I couldn't believe it. But Harry remembered me too and approached me with a smirk. Hey, is the kid still alive? Look, this is my grandchild. I'm blessed with children and money, happy as can be. I also have a company celebrating its 18th year on the stock market, worth $300 million, and a family with my daughter to introduce. What? Harry was stunned but then smirked immediately. Hey, just because your daughter died, you're lashing out in frustration? It's okay, you know. Your dad's company went bankrupt a long time ago, right? You don't have to put on airs. Or is it because you're too jealous of someone else's happiness, so you say these things out of desperation? I didn't think you were such a low woman. It's fine, you know? I could lend you some money if you need. Ah, did you just slip up because I have this grandchild with me? If you can say sorry now, I might still forgive you. Look at this large shopping center called Alt. If you're affiliated with such a grand facility, I'd kneel down and apologize for the divorce. But your company couldn't possibly compete with it, the biggest facility in the state, right? Harry started blabbering with a smirk. Without knowing anything about the situation. Alt is the nickname for this large shopping center we're in. As the largest commercial facility in the state, it's a popular spot talked about all over the US. And you? Just shopping with that grandchild of yours? I said it provocatively on purpose. Then, Harry's face darkened. He's still a man weak to cheap provocations, just like before. Yeah, so what? What about that kid, Lisa, from back then? Well, whether she's alive or not, it's none of my business anyway. In the end, you're just that, unlovable, uncharming, and nasty woman. My wife Mia, even now, is a cute and charming woman. The complete opposite of you. And yet, you're so stuck up, truly infuriating, a miserable woman who can't genuinely accept other people's happiness. Look, you can say whatever you want about me, but that baby, what, about 6 months old now? To be able to spew such vitriol when you have a child that age. You never know what kids are picking up on. Maybe it's time you stop demeaning people, it's only going to negatively affect the child, not that you would understand. Besides, I think belittling others is like a hobby for you. Be thankful I didn't demand alimony, given you had a mistress at the time of our divorce. I gave him a defiant smile. It seemed to ignite Harry's anger. What did you say? It's fine, you can claim whatever now. I have this adorable grandchild with me. Well, I kinda get your struggle. Your father's company went bankrupt after your daughter passed away, right? What are you working as now? In a bar? Have you fallen that low? Honestly, I'd be genuinely curious to see a place that would hire an old lady like you. Brainless, charmless, strangely assertive, finding a company that would hire you would be a challenge in itself. Or is it that? Are you living off the government? Well, it's easier for a single person, right? Since you don't have the ability to earn much, anyway. Shall we stop there? I cut off Harry's words and handed him a business card. Sorry for the late introduction, I'm Mirabelle Kirk, the owner of this alt facility. Huh? No way, you're bluffing. 18 years ago, you abandoned me and our sick daughter Lisa in the worst way possible. Well, I was fed up with you anyway, so it was for the best. As you know, my father's company was small and struggling to survive back then. But I supported my father desperately, and I took care of him. My father worked from dawn till dusk, sparing no time for sleep. You didn't know this, but considering Lisa, my father canceled his life insurance to cover her medical expenses. Sure, my father has passed away, but until the very end, he worried about his granddaughter. You wouldn't understand the hardships of others. Now, by various connections, I own this large commercial facility, Alt. Oh, and your daughter Lisa, whom you consider gone, has fully recovered and is married into a major real estate family herein. Unlike you, my daughter has found a truly good match. Huh? A major real estate family? Lisa married into such a prominent family? Are you dreaming? Are you okay in the head? People don't believe small lies, but do believe the big ones, some cartoonist said, but this is exactly it. It's pitiful, really. I was a fool to think of offering you help. I really ended up with a ridiculous wife. This business card, handed over so proudly, lacks any credibility. Even if I tear it up here, it wouldn't be worth picking up. Thinking back, It's a pitiful fantasy after not seeing you for so long. Are you living such a terrible life? Should I lend you some money? With interest 5 times over, I'll scatter some change here, so pick it up and count every piece. What are you talking about? Yes, my daughter's cancer was indeed in the intermediate stage. But you know, we changed doctors and somehow managed to cure her completely. Do you understand that struggle? Well, right after we split, my father's company experienced significant growth. Ever heard of Dolger? You must have, right? There's no way you, with your love for brand names, wouldn't jump on something new. Dolger. You mean that globally renowned brand? Are you for real? Dolger did indeed appear out of nowhere 18 years ago, but you're related to Dolger and Alt? Do you really think I'd believe such a story, you scammer? Dolger is a brand my father and I worked hard on, risking our company's future. I'm the CEO there now. My father has retired. It started as a small company, with only one physical store in a local area, but thanks to someone's help, we managed it barely. You know this story, don't you? Yeah, I know. The Dolger brand got its big break when a world-famous soprano singer noticed it and posted it as her favorite on social media, right? That kicked off its massive success. Now it's super popular among students. That's right. I showed a triumphant smile intentionally. Thanks to that world-famous soprano singer, our company grew enormously. Whatever we sell goes out of stock immediately. No matter how much we produce, it's never enough. Waiting half a year for product reservations has become the norm. Not just the Dolger brand, but other brands we've acquired have become famous because we can't stop buying them up. That caught the ear of a major real estate family here in Times Square, and I was invited to own this large commercial facility, Alt. But I guess that's irrelevant to a winner like you, huh? After all, you abandoned your wife and daughter to run off with your mistress. And here at Alt. It's a lie. Alt is such a huge commercial facility, there's nothing you can't find there. It has daily necessities, food, furniture, electronics, a movie theater, indoor playgrounds, a library, a food court, and spots perfect for SNS. There's no way someone like you could manage that. Or maybe, this business card is also a lie. Such a Cinderella story only exists in fairy tales. Have you finally lost your mind? I even feel sorry for you, truly. It's a popular tourist spot, and students from all over flock here, and you claim to be its owner. Lisa is actually gone, isn't she? This is why delusional women. What are you talking about? Lisa is very much alive. After achieving great success with my company, Lisa has always looked up to me. She's such a wonderful daughter, always thankful to me, her mother. She was inspired by me and worked incredibly hard, studying non-stop. And guess what? She graduated at the top of her class from Stanford University. She's my pride and joy. Now, she's working for my company and even received a marriage proposal from the main family of a major real estate dynasty here. But you probably wouldn't know how hard to get into Stanford, do you? Given that it took forever to graduate from a third-rate college, right? Oh, and just so you know, Lisa is pregnant now. It's a boy, fitting for an heir, though these days it doesn't really matter if it's a boy or a girl. But that's something you'd care about, isn't it?
You bastard!
Harry shouted loudly, silencing the room instantly.
It's a lie. It has to be. Hey, are there no security guards here? There's a con woman over here. Someone, catch her.
Suddenly, Harry began shouting as if he had lost his mind. The grandchild Harry was holding started crying. The stares from the surrounding customers were harsh, but that was the least of my concerns at the moment. And then, 3 security guards appeared. Miss Kirk. What seems to be the problem? Seeing one of the guards addressing me, Harry's face turned pale.
Ms. Kirk, you say? Security. This woman is a fraudster. She's claiming to be the owner here. If you're going to listen to anyone, it should be me dash.
I'm sorry, could you please take this man to the back reception room? It seems he gets too excited and causes a commotion here. Come on, take him away, and I'll come too. Understood. Come on, let's go.
Wait.
Harry was taken away by security. This commotion is bound to reach my daughter's in-laws eventually. I have no intention of hiding it, so I called my daughter's father-in-law. He's a strict man who hates lies. What will become of Harry, I wonder? After hearing the situation, my daughter's father-in-law said he'd come to the reception room right away. Mirabelle, just wait, did you say Harry Ivan? Really? What? Yes, that's him. Do you know him? I'll be there right away, thanks for letting me know. At this point, even if he were let outside, he'd cause a major disturbance. I'm not about to let anyone tarnish Alt's name. That's why I deliberately decided to have him taken to the reception room. 3 security guards escorted Harry to the back reception room of Alt. For some reason, Harry was reluctant to go to the reception room.
Wait. I won't make a scene anymore. I have my grandson with me. Please, just let me go home. I promise I won't cause any more trouble. Please.
Harry's grandson began to cry loudly as Harry resisted. Once we managed to get Harry seated on the sofa in the reception room, his face had turned completely pale.
Mirabelle. Come on, let me go home. I haven't done anything wrong, and, listen. I'll start paying alimony right now, so please, just let me go.
For some reason, Harry was averse to being in the reception room. Wondering why he was so reluctant, my daughter entered the reception room first. Oh, Lisa. You've grown so much, I'm your dad. Come on, Lisa, tell Mirabelle, tell her to let me dash. Who are you? I was told my father passed away. Lisa looked at Harry, pretending to be her father, with a cold gaze. Unable to withstand her stare, Harry finally quieted down. Come on, Lisa, help your dad out. My real father is no longer here, you say? Oh, so you are my father? The one who abandoned me and Mom when I got cancer to be with his mistress? Well, if you're asking for help, I can help you, the coldest way, straight to jail.
What are you saying? I'm your father. Quiet down.
Harry continued to shout, but there was no escape from the reception room. Especially with 3 security guards present. Lisa kept pressing. What about your mistress? Where is she now? Don't tell me she ran off on you? And this child you claim is your grandson, is he even related by blood? Lisa, what do you mean? I did some digging on this trash man before. Turns out, his mistress Mia had a son, but the father wasn't you. You unknowingly registered the birth and acknowledged the child, only to be abandoned by the mistress with the kid. It's karma for your bad deeds. It seems I have a half-brother, but I wonder if his wife truly gave birth to my brother's child?
What? Lisa. Keep quiet. You're causing a disturbance, so we'll take care of the child for now.
One of the security guards picked up the baby Harry was holding. Noting he wasn't even using a baby carrier. I couldn't help but think, what if he had dropped the baby?
Hey! My grandson! Once you calm down, we'll return him. Now, please, calm down.
Mom, why did you even bother bringing this loser into the reception room? He's not worth it, and you're the owner of Alt, aren't you supposed to be busy? It's okay, we need to settle things with this man. Lisa, is your father-in-law coming? Did you get in touch? Will he be here soon? He said he's on his way. Should be here any minute. Oh, here he is. Hello, Mirabelle. What's going on? Oh, hi, my ex-husband has been causing a scene in the store, and I couldn't just hide it, so I called you. Are you Harry Ivan by any chance? The atmosphere changed with just one sentence from Lisa's father-in-law. Harry's face turned completely white, as if it were the end of the world for him. I asked Lisa's father-in-law. Do you know this man, sir? Yes, Mirabelle, you called me at just the right time. Actually, this man committed fraud on my property, and I've been looking for him for a long time. Right? Harry Ivan? You haven't forgotten my face, have you? And causing trouble here at Alt as well? How much do you plan to mock people?
No, I was planning to pay back the money, and I was working towards that. It's true.
Sir, what do you mean? How do you know about this man? Then, the patriarch of the major real estate family in Times Square sat opposite Harry. Mirabelle, are you aware of the Gourmet Hall fraud case? Lisa, maybe you've heard the name? It was a huge fraud case that happened the year before last. Harry Ivan here conned money from vendors and participants, promising a Gourmet Hall festival, then disappeared. And now he dares to step on Alt's land. Quite bold, aren't you? Right? Harry Ivan? This con artist.
No. I had the intention to pay back. I was preparing for it. But then this woman, Mirabelle, started interfering. Do you have any idea how much damage the Gourmet Hall fraud case caused us? Do you understand, you rotten fool?
The father-in-law's rebuke was filled with immense power and anger. Even I was taken aback by it. But inside, I was giving him a standing ovation. Well said, I thought. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Lisa appealed to her father-in-law.
Father, this man abandoned me and my mom for his mistress, an awful man. All the hardships my mom went through were because of him. And yet, this man hasn't uttered a single word of apology.
Lisa, that's... So, you're that much of a scoundrel, Harry? Not only did you cause trouble for us, but you also did such a terrible thing to your own daughter. You're an utterly wicked man, not fit to be called a parent, Harry Ivan? If my ears heard correctly, you promised success if given permission to use the land. It seems all that was a lie, wasn't it? You were so desperate, bowing your head, but was that a lie too? Well, if you get arrested here, it will surely bring some peace to the vendors. Arrest. Wait, please, my grandson is still just a baby.
Some of the stores suffered so much damage from your scam that they had to close down, crying shop owners included. And then, there were those who had to downsize their shops because of the losses they incurred. Despite all the trouble you've caused everyone, you went off to be with your mistress, abandoning your wife and child. You're the picture of a criminal.
Criminal. I have been working hard for money. If I get arrested now, I won't be able to pay back the money. Then my sincerity and apology will dash. An apology from a piece of trash like you is worthless. Disappear, you fraudster. Security, please call the police. If we're quick, this might even make the evening news.
Wait, please! Mirabelle! I apologize for everything, just not the arrest, not the police. We used to be married, right? If I get caught, it'll tarnish your reputation too. So, please, anything but the police.
Harry clinging to me was devoid of any dignity. Just a rotten man. So I smiled and said to the hesitant security guard, "Call the police." "It's fine, I've done nothing wrong."
Mirabelle, Mirabelle! Do something! This deadbeat dad, give it a rest. Do you have any idea how much Mom has struggled? And Grandpa too, he had it hard until the day he died. And now you're trying to run away. What a disgrace!
You're the reason some stores went bankrupt, and now I can finally end my search. That's right. After that, Harry tried to interfere with the security guard's call for help, forcing the guard to step into the hallway. Harry began to cry loudly. Lisa and her father-in-law scolded Harry relentlessly until the police arrived. Harry could only cry without offering a single apology. It only fueled Lisa and her father-in-law's anger.
Stop crying! Are you even a man? Pathetic. Can't even say sorry. Lisa's right. You fraudster will corner you until the end. Be prepared.
Later, the police officers and the detective in charge of the Gourmet Hall fraud case arrived, taking Harry and the baby away.
Mirabelle. Mirabelle. It's true, forgive me. I don't want to go to jail yet. I have a little grandson. Please forgive me. Quiet down. You're being arrested on suspicion of fraud.
Harry resisted the police considerably, but in the end, he left the reception room with his shoulders slumped. I thanked my father-in-law. Thank you for telling me about the Gourmet Hall fraud case. Somehow, I feel refreshed too. No, the prosperity of Alt is thanks to your efforts, Mirabelle. And Lisa, such a hardworking mother and daughter. My son is indeed lucky to have her as his wife. Leave the Gourmet Hall fraud case to me. I'll make sure to squeeze every penny of compensation out of that lowest of men. The father-in-law laughed heartily and left the reception room. I told Lisa to sit down. What? Why? You're not even in your stable period yet, are you? It's good to stand up for me, but it's not good for the baby in your belly. No, Mom, getting back at such a man for you is a once-in-a-lifetime joy. Besides, I don't want you to suffer anymore. The baby in my belly will understand. Lisa said, gently stroking her not yet prominently swollen belly. Afterwards, Lisa and I turned on the TV in the reception room. Then, breaking news came on. The screen switched from a drama rerun to a male announcer's news broadcast. We have just received a breaking news. Harry Ivan, a suspect in the Gourmet Hall fraud case who has been on the run, was arrested. Many people forced to close their businesses or file for bankruptcy were involved in this case, and the police believe this arrest will help unveil the full extent of the incident. Like father-in-law said, it really made the evening news.
Yeah, I should have told him off more. He made Mom suffer.
The TV screen showed the front of the police station. Look. The car carrying Harry Ivan is entering the police station now. This massive fraud case occurred 2 years ago, and the police will reveal more details in a press conference. What a foolish man, really. But, after the trial, he'll be off to jail for a while. What do you mean, Lisa? Well, the perpetrator of this case, that man, was already on probation for another case. Probably, he'll receive a prison sentence for the Gourmet Hall fraud case. Well, it's none of our concern anymore. Mom, let's get back to work. I'll head home and lie down.
Is your stomach tight? Are you okay? I'm fine. This much is normal and even approved by my OBGYN.
Pregnancy shouldn't be taken lightly. If anything happens, call me or your husband.
Okay, Mom.
Afterward, Harry was convicted. As Lisa mentioned, he was already on probation, and he couldn't escape prison time. The TV was abuzz with the massive fraud case from 2 years ago, featuring interviews with victims driven to close their shops by Harry's scam. The victims uniformly expressed relief at the perpetrator's arrest, with tears in their eyes. Some had indeed filed for bankruptcy. No newspaper or magazine reporters came to me. Surely, my daughter's father-in-law had worked his magic behind the scenes. Then came my granddaughter's birth, making me a grandmother. The baby boy, born healthy. Both mother and child were healthy upon discharge from the hospital, and the father-in-law was utterly smitten. My son-in-law raised his hands in joy, exclaiming, "That's my boy." While continuing to work hard, I supported my daughter through her parenting struggles and occasionally took care of my grandson as a grandmother. I was at the peak of happiness. Then, an unknown number called me. Hello? Who is this?
What have you done?
Yes. I listened closely to my cell phone.
My ex-husband was found guilty because of you. The media comes to my place every day.
With that sentence, I realized who it was. Harry's divorced mistress, Mia.
What are you going to do about this? I can't even walk outside now.
Oh, and who was it that pushed another man's child onto Harry? What do you call that, I wonder?
How did you know that? That's what you call a trashy woman. Don't you ever call here again. Got it? If you do, I'll make sure it's not just call blocking you'll have to worry about.
Who do you think you are? I'm the victim here. Because of you. Oh, really? Should I start spreading the word that you were the woman who snatched Harry from me? I wouldn't be bothered at all. But then, maybe you wouldn't be able to live in Japan for a while, right? People love a good spectacle. You'd be surrounded by curious reporters. That's karma for you.
What? Using big words. You should come and apologize to me. I'm really struggling because of you. I got a letter from Harry blaming you for everything. Anyway, you need to come and apologize to me. What are you going to do about this?
Well, I don't see why I should apologize to you. After all, who was it that committed marriage snatching? Wasn't it you? It's fine. I can call the magazine reporters and tell them everything about now and what happened 18 years ago. It would probably only bother you, though, wouldn't it? Being sarcastic was incredibly satisfying. After all, it was my chance for revenge 18 years in the making. The call ended there. Thus, I put an end to the matters of 18 years ago and went back to my work.
What are you doing here? This place is off limits to strangers.
My son and his wife, who had been living with me, were moving out to their newly built detached house. Their new home was completed, and today was the housewarming party for their friends. Thinking it would be nice, I decided to join in the celebration, but my son and his wife turned me away at the gate, and on top of that, said something outrageous.
If you really want to enter so badly, pay an entrance fee of $1,000.
I was dumbfounded by her horrible words. To call me a stranger, even though I'm technically their mother-in-law and had lived with them until recently. To ask for an entrance fee when I came for a housewarming gift. And to do so with a smirk, demanding such an outrageous amount. As I mulled over what she had said, a boiling anger began to surge within me. Looking back, she had always been an incredibly rude person since we lived together. Looking down on me, hurling insults, treating me like a servant, pushing chores and the care of their children onto me. Especially with the grandchildren, she would frequently leave them with me to go out and have fun. My son was completely on her side, making it hard to believe we used to have a good relationship before he got married. Enough was enough. I was at my breaking point. I was determined to give them a thorough lesson. With a poker face, I looked at them and said, "All right, then I'll be leaving." Seeing that they had succeeded in driving me away, my son and his wife burst into triumphant laughter. Turning my back on them and their new home, I headed straight to a certain place. 3 days later.
Hey! What the heck is this all about?
The reason my son and his wife came rushing into our house, pale as ghosts, was quite the story. My name is Talia. Ever since our only son, Harry, got a job and left home, it's just been my husband and me in this big house. Even though I call him my son, Harry and I don't share any blood relation. He's the child of my husband and his previous wife. But blood relation or not, I've always loved Harry as my own, and he's always treated me like his real mom. After Harry moved out on his own, I felt a bit lonely, but there was also a sense of relief from being freed from child rearing, and I've been enjoying my days working and spending time with my husband. Both my husband and I work for a company owned by my brother-in-law. It's a small family-run business where most of the managerial positions are held by relatives. Since we're both working and hold managerial positions, I believe we're able to live a relatively affluent life. We were living these ordinary, happy days, never expecting what life was about to throw at us. Life is unpredictable, after all. 3 years after starting his job, Harry married a woman who also worked at the same company. She was stunningly beautiful with a great figure, the kind of woman 10 out of 10 people would call gorgeous. Seeing them smile at each other during their first meeting and their wedding, I felt very reassured. Some time after their marriage, I received the news that Harry's wife was pregnant.
Oh, congratulations. When is the baby due?
Thanks. The due date is still quite a way off. Why do you sound so gloomy? I was excited to hear the news about my first grandchild and offered my congratulations, but Harry's voice was heavy with concern. Was there already a problem? When I asked, worried, Harry started to speak in a feeble voice, actually. According to Harry, his wife takes great pride in her appearance. Since getting pregnant, she's been struggling with her belly getting bigger and her body changing, becoming increasingly hysterical. Every night she steps on the scale, looks downhearted, and screams when she looks in the mirror. Harry tries to comfort her by saying, "It's just a sign that the baby is growing well. It's not because you're getting fat, but it seems to have the opposite effect on her." It seems that my son's wife was growing increasingly frustrated, feeling that my son wasn't understanding her struggles, interpreting him as an unsupportive husband. She was berating him almost daily, and it sounded like he couldn't take it anymore. "I can't support her on my own, please help me," he pleaded with tears in his voice, asking if they could move in with us. Honestly, I didn't think moving in with us would distract her from her feelings, and given that we're both working during the day, I didn't see how we could offer much support. However, sympathizing with my son, who felt he'd collapse if he had to continue living alone with his wife, my husband and I discussed it and decided to welcome them into our home. After my son and his wife moved in, my impression of her only worsened. It started from her very first comment on moving day, which was a mockery of our home. "What's with this house, it's so old and dingy. Plus, it's cold. Oh, I wish we stayed in our apartment even if it was smaller." Our home is a traditional Victorian-style house that's been in my husband's family since his grandfather's time. It's charming in its way, but admittedly old in many respects. It's prone to drafts, so her complaints weren't unfounded. However, as someone about to live with us, it seemed utterly disrespectful to openly criticize our home in front of us, the homeowners and her in-laws. But her bad behavior didn't stop at mocking our home. "Hey, old woman, can you make dinner quickly? And make sure you clean up properly. It's unbelievable how dusty it gets inside. What if something happens to the baby because of it?" My son's wife began treating me like a servant and throwing derogatory comments my way. I reprimanded her once for such behavior, but she retorted, "I'm pregnant. What if I miscarry because of the stress?" and refused to change her impolite attitude. Despite doubting that such things would cause a miscarriage, I was aware that pregnant women are delicate and shouldn't be stressed. I hoped that once the baby was born, her attitude would improve. Perhaps she was just irritable because things weren't going her way during pregnancy. Her hormonal balance must be off, and she must be having a hard time. With this in mind, I had no choice but to remain silent and choose to endure her brutality. A few months after they moved in, my son's wife gave birth to a healthy baby. My husband and I were overjoyed at the arrival of our much-awaited first grandchild. Exhausted from the birth, the usually noisy daughter-in-law was quiet for a while, allowing us to enjoy a brief period of peace. However, about a month after the birth of the grandchild, our household became even more miserable than before the delivery. First off, not long after the birth of my grandson, my husband was killed in a car accident. I was left in shock by the sudden loss of my husband. While drowning in deep sorrow, I managed the funeral and returned home. In the living room, my son's wife, who had claimed she couldn't handle the stress of the funeral because she was postpartum, was sitting heavily on the sofa my husband always used. She noticed my return and hurled insults. "Now that he's gone, the house feels so much bigger." Oh, what a relief. I couldn't believe the words she snorted through her nose and doubted my ears. But she continued to speak ill of my late husband, making it clear that her disrespect was heartfelt. True, my husband was a workaholic, but I respected and loved him for his dedication. To have my son's wife, who barely knew him and always complained, mock him was infuriating. As I was about to retort, my son said something unbelievable. Yeah, really. He was never home but always had something to nag about when he was. It was so annoying. My son who took advantage of his wife and started belittling her husband. I had hoped he would reprimand her, but instead, he said the exact opposite. Speechless at their audacity, they seemed satisfied with their venting and retreated to their bedroom. After that, my son's attitude changed. Until now, no matter how much his wife belittled or mistreated me, he would not chide her and remained a bystander. But after my husband's death, he began to agree with her entirely, berating and ordering me around. My son, who never had a major rebellious phase and always had a good relationship with me as his stepmother, had suddenly turned so cruel. Could this be the influence of his wife? However, it seemed I was the only one who felt his attitude had shifted so drastically. Apparently, the reason my son's wife acted so condescendingly towards me was that my son told her I was not his real mother. I know. You're not Harry's real mom, right? I heard he could never really see you as his mom. Plus, you were always so annoying, trying to mother him all the time. I heard he's been wanting to move out for ages but just put up with it for his dad's sake. When she told me that, I felt as if the ground had crumbled beneath my feet. I couldn't believe my son felt that way about me. As she sneered and said, "So, I really have no reason to respect you, do I?" Before walking away, I watched her back in stunned silence. Moreover, my son and his wife's behavior began to escalate. They didn't just hurl insults at me anymore, but started dumping their child on me to go out and enjoy themselves. Completely disregarding my schedule, they would go out day or night with friends, indulging in shopping sprees or parties. At times, they even took overnight trips for the weekend, leaving their infant child with me. What were they thinking, leaving a baby to gallivant around? Despite my protests every time they pushed their child on me, they wouldn't listen. Worse, they would say things like, "You should be grateful to spend time with your adorable grandchild." And the worst part was them leaving their crying baby with me at night.
Hey, I was sleeping so well, and you woke me up. Make it stop crying, will you?
It's unbearable being woken up every night like this. Make sure the baby doesn't cry at night, okay? It's natural for babies to cry at night. No matter how well you take care of them during the day, babies will cry. To demand that I, and not they, should solve this is absurd. Do they lack parental awareness? Though I'm filled with resentment, if I refuse to take care of my grandchild, they'd probably just neglect him. Unable to abandon my dear grandchild, I found myself stuck with taking care of him as they demanded. As time passed, years went by. My grandson grew up healthy and gradually became less of a handful, truly in his most adorable phase. Yet, my son and his wife continued to leave him with me while they went out. One day, when this had become the norm, my daughter-in-law suddenly made an outrageous demand. "I'm sick of this old, crumbling house, I can't stand it anymore." Since the beginning of our living together, she had always complained about our old Victorian-style house. Whether she had finally reached her limit or because leaving the grandchild with me no longer felt like a burden, she started throwing tantrums about wanting to move to a brand new house. To my dismay, my son joined in, saying, "Actually, I've always hated living in this old-fashioned house," and expressed a desire to move. Despite their complaints, I thought they wouldn't actually move. I lived shutting out their constant grumbling. But a few months later, my son and his wife really did purchase prime real estate in the city center and built a new house to move into. Finally, we can say goodbye to that rundown house. Though I had my reservations, I also breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I was finally free from them. On the day their new house was completed, I visited to see their new place as a form of celebration. There, I found many people, including my daughter-in-law's friends and her parents, visiting. Surrounded by a crowd, my son and his wife were proudly showing off their new home. They seem busy, so I'll just take a quick look around and then leave, I thought as I approached them. However, they rejected me with a look of disdain.
"What are you doing here? This place is off limits to strangers."
I was taken aback by being called a stranger and denied entry. Right after that, as if she had thought of something amusing, she smirked and said, "If you really want to come in, then pay an entrance fee of $1,000. I was shocked by such an outrageous demand. To call me a stranger, even though I'm technically their mother-in-law and we lived together until recently. To ask for an entrance fee just to visit for a housewarming. And to do so with a smirk, demanding such an exorbitant amount." As I processed what she had said, a boiling anger began to surge within me. Reflecting on our time living together, she had always been incredibly rude. Looking down on me, hurling insults, treating me like a servant, pushing chores and the care of their child onto me. Especially regarding their child, she would frequently leave him with me to go out and have fun. My son was completely on her side, making it hard to believe we used to have a good parent-child relationship before he got married. It might be unavoidable that he can't think of me as his mother, but I've always considered him my true son and believed I raised him with love. Yet, the moment my husband died, they stopped pretending and began to mock me. Doesn't he feel any gratitude for how he was raised? I was seething with anger, feeling as though my kindness had been repaid with betrayal. I've reached my breaking point. I'm going to get back at them thoroughly. With that determination in my heart, I looked at them expressionlessly and said, "All right, then I'll be going." "What, you're leaving without even coming in after making the trip here?" "Well, don't bother coming back again," they said, laughing loudly as they sent me away. Turning my back on them and their new house, I went home and then straight to the bank. 3 days later.
Hey! What in the world is this about?
My son and his wife, looking pale as ghosts, came storming into my house. They barged in with such force it was as if they were about to break the door, but I dealt with them outside, not letting them in. "Keep it down. You're disturbing the neighbors."
The bank account is empty. What's this all about?
I scolded, not bothering to hide my annoyance, but my daughter-in-law snapped back as if she couldn't care less about my attitude. "The bank account is empty." Knowing exactly what she was referring to, I suppressed the urge to laugh and coolly replied, "Oh, the bank account. I've moved all the money to another bank account. From now on, you'll be paying for your own living expenses and mortgage. And of course, that includes clothes and drinks." Wah! My son and his wife were speechless at my response. In fact, ever since they began living with us, they had been using my bank account for all their expenses. Not just for living costs like food and child-rearing expenses for my grandson, but also the lavish spending on clothes and luxury goods, and even the down payment and land purchase for their new house, were all paid from my account. Looking back, I wish I hadn't spoiled him so much, but ever since I remarried his father, I've always felt sympathy for my son. Losing his biological mother at a young age and then his father right after his own child was born, I wanted to support him as a mother, even if we weren't related by blood. In fact, I felt I had to. That's why I endured all the verbal abuse and mistreatment, thinking doing whatever I could for him was my way of showing love. But this incident with their new house was the last straw. If my son had become such a foolish person, I thought I might as well give up on him. Perhaps my husband had foreseen a day like this would come. He used to say, "If anything happens to me, cut ties with my son and his wife." When I first heard this, having no bad feelings towards them, I was shocked and asked why he would say something like that. He then shared his feelings that our son was foolish in many ways and that the woman he chose as his wife was trouble. He spoke with specific examples, but at the time, I couldn't believe they would act in such a way and wondered if my husband was just imagining things. Still, the fact that my usually reserved husband spoke so strongly left an impression on me, and his words lingered in my mind after he passed away. Every time I was mistreated by my son and his wife, I would pray at my husband's altar for advice. And this time, I declared, I think it's time to let go of my son, before heading to the bank. Maybe being cut off from the bank account and losing access to the money they freely used hit them hard. They stood dumbfounded, their faces ashen.
"Is that all you have to say?
Then please leave."
Wait.
My son tried to stop me as I entered the house, reaching for the door. I slapped his hand away and faced them. Sorry, but this house is off limits to strangers. If you're willing to pay an entrance fee of $1,000, I might consider letting you in. Wha? Repeating the words my daughter-in-law had said to me back to them, they were petrified. They were outraged but ended up leaving without a word. I thought I was finally freed from this trouble, but it wasn't that easy. The next day, my son and his wife showed up at my house again. Morning, Mom. Sorry about yesterday. Seems like we both got a bit carried away. Are you mad? Oh, Mother, you look tired. May I give you a shoulder massage? Their tone had completely changed from the day before, as if they were now trying to gauge my mood. My daughter-in-law, who had never called me mother before, started doing so while trying to be sweet with body contact. Their behavior, clearly trying to butter me up, was disheartening. Instead of properly apologizing for their past actions, they tried to superficially make amends and win me over, which was nothing short of shallow. They probably didn't believe I would truly cut them off. Fed up and not wanting to say anything, I was repulsed by how sickeningly sweet they were trying to be and bluntly rejected them. Buttering me up now won't change anything. I won't give you a penny anymore. Please leave. Realizing their strategy wasn't working, they instantly dropped their facade and began yelling in anger.
After we went out of our way to humble ourselves, you get all high and mighty. You dare talk back like that, you old hag. Just give us the money.
Their true colors showed as they hurled unbearable insults at me. Their behavior lacked any decency, and all I could see was their appalling nature. Considering stopping this before it became a real nuisance to the neighborhood, my daughter-in-law yelled, "Hey, don't ignore us," and, in a fit of rage, threw a potted plant on the ground beside the entrance. It shattered with a loud noise. After a moment of silence, my son screamed again.
Just drop dead, you old witch. Then all your money will be mine.
His wife nodded in agreement with his words. Shocked by their actions and my son's words, I paused for a moment. My son thinks he will inherit everything from me. After realizing what he said, I burst into laughter. They seem to be under a big misunderstanding. What are you talking about? You have no inheritance rights. Huh? Don't spout nonsense. My son and his wife did not want to believe me at all, but when I explained the facts to them, their faces gradually changed. In fact, I never legally adopted my son. Legally speaking, my son is just my husband's child from another marriage, and he has no right to my estate. For him to inherit anything from me, either adoption or a will written by me would be necessary, and of course, I have no intention of writing such a will. The only other option would be adoption, but I've already filed a non-acceptance declaration to ensure he can't adopt me without my consent. This means, unless I change my mind, it's impossible for my son to inherit anything from me. So, even if I pass away, you two won't get a dime from me. Now, if you understand, please leave. But my son and his wife, who clearly had been counting on my inheritance, were shocked by this revelation, lost for words and stunned. Even when prompted to leave, they didn't budge. Fed up, I casually picked up my smartphone and made a call. Hello, is this the police? My flower pot at home was broken. Yes, the perpetrator is still right in front of me. Could you come quickly to catch them?
What? The police?
I had called the local police station. I reported the incident of my daughter-in-law breaking the flower pot as property damage. Realizing I had called the police, they were terrified and fled from my house before the police arrived. Watching them hastily leave, I felt relieved, thinking I had finally resolved the problem that had been troubling me for years. By the way, after the flower pot was broken, I chose not to press charges since I wasn't injured, allowing the matter to be resolved without further action. I just wanted to get rid of my son and his wife without making a big fuss, thinking it could lead to more trouble or resentment if I did. I decided not to press charges over the broken flower pot since I wasn't injured, and it wasn't very expensive. Later, I heard through the grapevine that my son and his wife continued to live lavishly and were on the brink of ruining themselves financially. Despite not having access to my account, my daughter-in-law, assuming there was money in my son's account, didn't stop her extravagant spending and used credit cards. Her calculation was way off. There wasn't enough money in my son's account to cover her spending. As a result, my son was overwhelmed by the mortgage for their new home and his wife's spending, piling up debt after debt. The debt ballooned to an amount far beyond repayment, and in desperation, my son resorted to embezzling company funds. This was quickly discovered, and he was fired as a result. Burdened with debt and now jobless, his wife demanded a divorce, seeing no use in him any longer. However, my son refused to consent to the divorce, and their argument escalated into a legal battle. Shockingly, during the court proceedings, it was revealed that my grandson was not my son's child, indicating that his wife had been unfaithful. This added issues of alimony payments to the messy divorce, further complicating the situation. The two are still embroiled in a bitter court battle, hurling insults at each other. Meanwhile, I've finally been freed from the headache that was my son's family's problems and have been able to devote myself more passionately to my work. As a result, our company's sales have multiplied, bringing joy to my employees and raising my personal reputation. While there's no promotion or raise left for me to achieve, which I wasn't particularly interested in anyway, I feel more motivated to work hard for the sake of my employees who look up to me. Now alone in the spacious house that once held my family, I live here immersed in memories of my late husband. Every day, I smile and talk to his photo, spending my days in peace. It was just a moment of folly. It's all in fun. Since Tiana seems to be reflecting on her actions, how about we let bygones be bygones this time? Despite being newlywed and pregnant, I found out about my husband's affair. Yet, he puts his actions on a shelf and starts throwing a tantrum, not wanting a divorce. His mother comes to his aid, pressing me to forgive him. But I have no intention of forgiving a husband who betrayed his pregnant wife. On the contrary, I had prepared a punishment that would leave him unable to start over.
Why should I have to hold back for you guys? I'm going to expose you thoroughly and drop you into hell. Oh, did you forget, by any chance? How smart I am. I showed them my smartphone with a C attitude. It displayed the live screen on social media. Right after, both the mistress and my husband's phones received a call simultaneously. From the company. Me too. Why? Picking up the call, their faces turned an interesting shade of pale. My name is Tiana. I married my coworker, Ken, a year ago and we're expecting our long-awaited baby, currently in my 7th month of pregnancy. We, newlyweds, are looking forward to the birth of our baby. We work at a well-known major corporation where I am a programmer. In a society where understanding for maternity or paternity leave is often lacking, fortunately, my coworkers and superiors have been nothing but supportive and happy for my pregnancy. You'll be going on leave soon, huh? Gonna miss you. I'm about to hit my 8th month of pregnancy and had informed my company that I plan to work up until the last moment, but it's about time to go on maternity leave. My boss gave me a kind word, encouraging me to give birth to a healthy baby, to which I nodded with a smile. It seems like everyone in the other departments can't stop talking about Tiana's baby too. Ken seems to be really looking forward to the kid. What? What's that? Ken is all ready. Ken works in a different department from me. He's been saying stuff like my wife graduated top of her class from Harvard and has an IQ of 140, so our kid's bound to be smart. Maybe they'll be a doctor or a government official someday. Man, the baby's not even born yet and he's already saying stuff like that. I couldn't help but give a wry smile at Ken's overenthusiasm. But I guess it's all because he's looking forward to our child's arrival. I even found his excitement kind of endearing. Long day, huh? Need any help with anything? Oh, I'll take care of the laundry. When I got home from work and was preparing dinner, Ken offered to help with the household chores.
Thanks, could you? It's getting harder to do chores since my belly's gotten bigger. It'd really help me out if you could take care of it. Ken happily took on the task of doing the laundry. My colleagues, my boss, and even my husband have all been supportive and considerate of my condition. I felt truly blessed and grateful for the warmth of the people around me. But there was one thing that worried me. It was about my mother-in-law, Ken's mom. From the beginning of our marriage, she had disliked me, calling me a high and mighty woman because of my education. I'd been intentionally avoiding interaction with her because she'd always make snide remarks whenever we met, but since becoming pregnant, I've had to see her more often. I can't exactly avoid showing her the baby after it's born. The thought made me feel gloomy. However, Ken has been reassuring me, saying, no matter what my mom says, I'll protect Tiana. I decided to trust in his words and not to stress about my mother-in-law for now. Unlike with my mother-in-law, I get along well with Ken's sister, and Ken has even said, if you ever have trouble, you should talk to my sister. Though my mother-in-law's attitude worries me, I feel blessed to be surrounded by supportive relationships. Knowing I have many reliable people to turn to if anything troublesome happens felt reassuring. I just hope everything goes smoothly with the birth. However, an incident that trampled on my wishes was about to occur. One day, while my husband Ken was out, I got a call from my mother-in-law. On the surface, she was concerned about my health, but her words were laced with the usual sarcasm.
You shouldn't slack off on the housework just because you're pregnant. If you don't move around, you'll just get fatter and make the delivery more difficult. It's not like you can just relax at home now that you're not working, right?
Huh? Yes, I'll be careful. I couldn't help but give a wry smile at her blunt way of speaking. Talking to my mother-in-law always left me feeling drained because of her knack for unwittingly hurting people with her words. Ken had told me I didn't need to force myself to meet with his mom, but since she's his mother, I tried to act normally. Thinking back, my relationship with my mother-in-law had been rocky from the start. I remember her asking Ken why he chose to marry someone 5 years older, referring to me. Moreover, my top-ranking graduation from Harvard only added fuel to her fire for mother-in-law bullying. She got married right after high school, and seems to believe that a woman's education is nothing but a hindrance, that it's natural for a woman to stay home and wait for her husband's return. She didn't like the idea of me working in the first place and strongly opposed when I said I intended to work until the last minute after my pregnancy was discovered.
You're planning to work even though you have a baby in your belly? What are you thinking?
There are handovers to do at work, and I can't just quit suddenly. I've checked with my doctor and plan to work as long as it's safe. What a terrible mother. I can't believe it. My mother-in-law hardly listened to my earnest explanations and started to berate me more frequently. It seemed she couldn't stand me, as her snide remarks gradually escalated.
Having a too high IQ as a mother might cause developmental disorders in the child. Oh, it might be your fault if the child ends up disabled.
She took some dubious information she found somewhere at face value and used it to stoke my fears. I've never heard of such a thing.
Are you even a mother? You should do your research properly.
Sorry. Even though my mother-in-law's words seemed like mere nitpicking, I endured without talking back, not wanting to worsen our relationship. Then, taking my silence as consent, her attitude became increasingly terrible. Exhausted by my mother-in-law's behavior, I spoke to Ken when he came home. Your mom deliberately says things to stir up my anxiety. Can't you do something about it? Mom's just worried about you and the baby. I don't think she means any harm, so just ignore her. Don't take it too seriously. Despite my plea, Ken didn't take it seriously and just laughed it off. I try not to mind, but there's a limit. Please, talk to your mom for me. Come on, don't be so tense. Maybe you're just taking everything the wrong way because of maternity blues. That's not it. Just try to take it easy, it's not good for the baby either. Ken brushed off my concerns and headed to the bathroom for a bath. I wanted him to listen seriously, but it seemed he didn't think it was a big deal. Really in trouble here. It wouldn't hurt to listen more seriously, I sighed involuntarily. He said he would protect me from his mom. I felt betrayed by Ken's attitude. Hey, Tiana? While I was stewing in my mixed feelings, my husband called out from the bathroom. What? When called, he asked me to bring him his smartphone that was left on the table. So oblivious, although I was slightly annoyed, I reconsidered, thinking it best to avoid arguments when expecting a baby soon. As instructed, I picked up Ken's smartphone from the living room table. Oops. At that moment, I accidentally let it slip from my hand, dropping Ken's smartphone onto the floor. I hope it's not broken. The impact from the drop caused the phone's cover to come off. I hurriedly picked up the smartphone and the cover, trying to put them back together. That's when I noticed something. What's this? What does it mean? When I flipped over the smartphone with the cover off, I found something unbelievable attached to it. A photo showing a man and a woman kissing. The people in the photo were Ken and a young woman. I recognized the woman's face. She was indeed a female coworker from Ken's department. The Purikura had a date on it. Just a week ago, quite recent. Finding this clear evidence of infidelity, I was deeply shaken. What should I do? I don't want to believe it. For the moment, I took out my own smartphone and took a photo as evidence. Maybe it was a mistake made in the heat of the moment at a department drinking party, under the influence of alcohol. I hoped that was the case. With this wish, I put the smartphone cover back as it was. Hey, you done yet? I could hear Ken hurrying me from the bathroom. Trying not to show it on my face, I concealed my inner turmoil and handed him his smartphone. I could pretend nothing happened. Our baby is going to be born in a few more months. But what if it really was an affair? Maybe now is the time to gather the courage to find out if Ken's cheating is true. While hoping no more facts about my husband's infidelity would come out, I decided to look for evidence. However, my hopes would be betrayed. I ended up discovering undeniable proof of my husband's affair. Company loans every employees a portable laptop, so seizing the opportunity while Ken was out, I secretly started up the computer. Carelessly, no password was set. He must have thought I'd never find out about the affair, thinking too highly of himself. This thought made me even angrier. I opened the email software. There, I found exchanges between Ken and his mistress, Mia. I can't wait to see Mia again. My wife's been so whiny lately, maybe it's maternity blues, but it's getting on my nerves. Poor Ken, next time we meet, I'll make sure to give you all the comfort you need. As I read through their emails, it seemed Ken often spoke poorly of me to his affair partner, Mia. The kid will definitely be smart because it's mine. I want to divorce as soon as the baby is born, take custody of the child, and then marry Mia right away. Shockingly, Ken was planning to divorce me after our child was born, take custody, and then remarry with his mistress, Mia. Going through their extensive email exchanges, I discovered that Ken had been bringing Mia into our home when I was out. Overwhelmed by this egregious betrayal, I started to cry uncontrollably. Perhaps due to the intense stress, my belly began to hurt. Feeling deep despair from the betrayal of a husband I had trusted, I thought. Why? I had trusted him all this time. Just when I felt like crumbling under the weight of this shocking truth, the baby inside me kicked strongly. As if encouraging me to be strong. Wiping away my tears, I realized I can't just sit here and cry. I'm going to be a mother, I can't break down over this. I refuse to let this go without a fight. To protect the future of my unborn child, I vowed to fight back against my husband and his mistress. To thoroughly crush them, I continued to gather evidence of the affair, even with my heavy belly. While keeping up appearances as usual, I secretly installed a GPS tracker in Ken's car. Modern GPS devices are highly efficient. Monitoring his movements, I quickly identified that they were frequently visiting a specific love hotel. I also managed to identify Mia's social media account and confirmed that she made suggestive posts on the same days Ken was out. Thinking about how they had been carrying on their affair behind my back while I was pregnant made me feel nauseous. I've gathered almost all the evidence I need, now it's time I devised a final plan to obtain undeniable proof of their affair. Hey, this Saturday is my mom's birthday, right? Since it'll be busy after the baby is born, I thought it might be a nice opportunity to go out for dinner with both of our parents. Is that okay? Of course, that's fine. It'll be good for you to spend some quality time with the family. I've got something on that day, so I can't join, but please send my regards to your parents. Ken readily agreed. I sensed a bit of excitement in his demeanor about me leaving. It made me silently chuckle, thinking he had fallen right into my plan. Ken had no clue. The birthday we were celebrating this Saturday wasn't my mother's, but my mother-in-law's. With Ken absent, the birthday dinner for my mother-in-law took place at a fancy restaurant she had always wanted to visit, just the four of us, my in-laws, my sister-in-law, and me. I had told the in-laws that Ken couldn't make it because of work. It would have been nicer if Ken could have joined us. My mother-in-law expressed her disappointment, but she seemed much happier than usual, delighted to be at her dream restaurant. For once, she didn't make any snide remarks toward me. As the birthday celebration was winding down, and it seemed like we were about to part ways, I mentioned that I had forgotten the gift for my mother-in-law at home and that Ken might be back by now. Oh, then let's all go to Tiana's place. It's a special occasion after all, and I'd like to see Ken too. My mother-in-law suggested cheerfully, unsuspecting of anything. The restaurant where we celebrated the birthday was very close to my house. We caught a taxi and all piled in. Arriving at home, we walked into the house together. There was no sign of Ken in the living room. Where could Ken be? If he's not in the living room, he's probably in the bedroom. Let's all go and surprise him. Everyone nodded at my suggestion. What my mother-in-law didn't notice was that at the entrance, there were Ken's shoes and a pair of women's shoes I didn't recognize. They must be in the bedroom. We headed to the bedroom and opened the door.
Yikes! What? Why is everyone here? What's going on?
Sure enough, there were Ken and his mistress, Mia, embracing each other, completely naked.
Ken! What is this? Who is this woman?
My mother-in-law screamed, shaking with anger at the sight of her son's indecent appearance.
Tiana, wasn't it supposed to be your mom's birthday dinner?
Too caught up in your affair to even remember your own mother's birthday? Today is your mom's birthday, I said coldly, looking down on them.
Forgetting your own mother's birthday because of an affair. You disgrace! Shameful! To think you would do something like this.
Both my sister-in-law and father-in-law started berating Ken with disgusted expressions. Facing his family's accusations, Ken hung his head, his face pale. His nakedness only added to the absurdity of the situation. Although I had been gathering evidence of Ken's infidelity, I knew that confronting him directly might still lead him to deny everything. So, I decided to create a situation he couldn't wiggle out of by involving his own family. I knew he would surely invite his mistress over if I was out of the house. Predicting this, I planned the birthday dinner for my mother-in-law. As expected, Ken had emailed Mia to come over while his wife was out, thinking he had the house to himself. Of course, I saved those exchanges as evidence too. You've really been doing whatever you please up till now, haven't you? It's not like that, this was just a moment of weakness. Planning to make excuses now? It's not an excuse. I felt lonely since Tiana got pregnant and stopped paying attention to me, and then she seduced me.
Hey! Don't put the blame on me. You were the one who said you were tired of your wife and came on to me.
Ken and Mia started a shameful argument, yelling at each other. You were planning to divorce me after our child was born and then marry her, right? I've seen all the emails. If you were going to have an affair, at least you could have set a password on your computer. Ken couldn't come up with a reply and just looked down in silence.
You guys are newlyweds. And with a baby on the way. What were you thinking? betraying Tiana with an affair.
The whole family was furious with Ken. I have nothing to do with this. While being condemned by everyone present, and with Ken diminished to silence, his mistress, Mia, hurriedly dressed and tried to escape.
Where do you think you're going? If you run, I'll submit the video of you and Ken being overly affectionate at work as evidence.
I grabbed Mia's hand as she tried to flee and said so. Mia turned pale at my words and started crying, begging for forgiveness. But there was no way I would be swayed by such an act. Knowing how much they had ridiculed me, I demanded a divorce from Ken, along with child support payments and a no-contact order with our child. And of course, I told Mia she would have to pay damages too. Mia meekly agreed to the terms for the compensation. But Ken, not willing to accept my demands, started arguing that it was just a fling. It was just a moment of weakness. I never really intended to marry her, believe me. It was all just for fun. Hey, Tiana, Ken is saying he's sorry, so how about we just let bygones be bygones this time? Then, my mother-in-law, perhaps moved by his attitude, surprisingly pressed me to forgive Ken. Mom, you saw what Ken did with your own eyes, didn't you? Indeed, having an affair is wrong. But your baby will be born soon. Can't you forgive him just this once? I can't do that. Ken is the one who did something wrong. Why should I be the one to forgive? That's exactly why you're so uptight. I pity the child being raised by such a narrow-minded mother. You know what, I could raise the child. That might be for the best. My mother-in-law started arguing that she'd be a better parent than someone like me who couldn't forgive a single affair. What are you talking about? I'm the victim here.
That's why you should just forgive a simple mistake and not act like a victim. You're so clueless.
My mother-in-law was adamant that I was in the wrong for not being able to forgive Ken. As I felt my indignation rise, my father-in-law, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up.
Silence. What are you even saying? Tiana is the one who's been betrayed by her husband, and you're telling her to be ashamed of acting like a victim?
His rare outburst silenced my mother-in-law. Then, Ken and Mia's phones rang simultaneously. From the company. Me too. Why? They answered the phones with puzzled looks, but their faces quickly turned pale. Not surprisingly, there was a company laptop on the bedroom table, used by Ken for working from home, with the camera of an internal video conference accidentally left on, broadcasting everything online to the company. Over 100 people were logged into the online meeting room, including the company president. Everyone has already seen everything you two have done.
How could you? This is awful. That's right. Why did you have to involve the company?
Angered, they started to blame me. Why should I have to hold back for you too? You were the ones who made a fool of me first. I'll expose you thoroughly and let you fall into hell. Oh, did you forget by any chance? How smart I am. I showed them my smartphone. It displayed the live screen on social media. I had taken over Mia's SNS account in advance and was live streaming video from a camera I had hidden in the room. The account was made public, visible to anyone around the world. Mia's misconduct is probably known to all her friends and relatives by now. Having endured so much until now, I wasn't going to hold back when it came to punishment. That's what I thought as I planned to bring them down to hell today.
Please stop the broadcast. At least let us get dressed, they begged and prostrated themselves.
No, what you two did to me doesn't compare at all. With faces twisted in despair, Ken and Mia looked utterly defeated.
Tiana. I was completely in the wrong about everything until now. Please, forgive me.
My mother-in-law, who had always meekly listened to whatever I said, began to tremble and hastily apologized for all the past mistreatment.
Let me apologize as well. My wife and son have been inexcusable.
My father-in-law added, deeply sorry and apologize for his family's past actions. And you? What are you going to do? I said, glaring at Ken. I will comply with all of Tiana's demands. Ken, as if having given up on everything, agreed to accept all my conditions. When I urged him to sign the divorce papers immediately in front of everyone watching the live stream, he complied without any objection. Of course, the president and acquaintances were watching the video too, making everyone a witness. I felt incredibly refreshed that everything went according to plan. Months have passed since then. I have safely given birth, and a beautiful baby girl is sleeping peacefully in my arms. Standing in front of the computer, I showed my daughter to my colleagues and superiors over a remote connection. Everyone at work was delighted to see the baby's growth through the screen. Since then, I received alimony from my ex-husband and his mistress. My ex-husband moved back to his parents' house and was placed under the watchful eye of his father. Unable to endure being the subject of gossip at work, both he and his mistress ended up quitting their jobs. Ken is reportedly looking for re-employment to pay the alimony, but due to his pride from previously working at a major corporation, he's struggling to keep a job and has resorted to doing day labor. After the incident, my mother-in-law became a recluse at home after her mistreatment became known around the neighborhood. My former sister-in-law shared these updates about the former in-laws with me. The fact that I was betrayed by my husband was unbearably painful. However, thanks to the presence of my daughter, I did not give up and am now living a peaceful life. Life as a single mother will have its challenges. But I have people around me who support me. I want to continue to be strong without giving up, for my daughter and me. That's what I thought, looking at my daughter sleeping peacefully in my arms.
I mean, I fell in love, what can I say?
In front of me, a childhood friend turned mom buddy said this with a sly grin, and I was trying my hardest not to burst out laughing. So, you fell in love, huh? Well then, by all means, make my husband happy. I'm handing him over to you, such a man. So, from now on, you two share the sour and the sweet together as a couple. Though, it seems like there won't be much sweetness. My name is Michelle. It feels weird to say this about myself, but I'm a 48-year-old with no patience. When I start thinking something is bothersome or I just don't like it, I quickly give up on it. Maybe you could say I make decisions quickly, in a sense? What? You think I should try a bit harder? Well, back in the day, I was actually more of the try too hard type. Though it sounds like a flaw when I talk about it, I've grown to really love my easygoing personality, all thanks to a certain experience. It all started when I was so young, I barely had any memories of it. My parents moved in next door to another couple, and we lived side by side. Why did that happen, you ask? It's because all of our parents were childhood friends. Two sets of childhood friends became lovers, got married around the same time, and even became pregnant at the same time. Then they decided, our kids are going to be the same age, so let's keep living next door to each other and get along just as well. And so, I, Michelle Davis, and Ava Wilson, born in the house next door, were destined to be childhood friends even before we were born. You might think it's wonderful to have childhood friends from both the parents' and the kids' generations, and to be close with each other's families. And I'm one of those who would agree with you. But, for such a wonderful story to actually be wonderful, it requires the childhood friends to have good personalities. Unfortunately, my childhood friend had a very bad personality. Since our parents would go back and forth between our houses to have dinner together whenever they had the time, Ava and I naturally grew up like sisters. We were together all the time, to the point that before we even went to preschool, we thought of each other as actual sisters. We didn't have any concept of who was the older or younger sister, but somehow, Ava always acted like she was the older sister. Thinking back, realizing we weren't sisters might have been the first trigger. I don't remember exactly when, being too young, but for some reason, Ava started imitating things like my catchphrases. Our parents thought it was because Ava felt lonely after finding out we weren't sisters, saying, maybe her imitating is her way of showing she's the closest to Michelle, huh? It might have been true to some extent, but since Ava was so young, we can only guess her feelings. Imitating catchphrases could be seen as cute, and our parents probably found it endearing. However, as Ava grew up, she started wanting the same things as me, answering with my favorite foods when asked about her preferences, acting as if she wanted to become a copy of me. Our parents heartily thought of us as similar childhood friends, but in reality, it was just a one-sided imitation on her part. What I disliked about it, I couldn't exactly say. But as a child, I somehow felt uncomfortable with Ava's behavior and found myself increasingly saying, "Don't copy me," and getting angry with her. However, our parents misinterpreted this as me throwing tantrums. Well, it's not surprising. When asked what I didn't like, all I could say was, "I just don't like it," and being a kid, I wasn't good at explaining myself. I was scolded every time to get along, and my true feelings never got through to anyone. Growing up with the heavy presence of a childhood friend, I eventually entered elementary school. That's when my relationship with Ava dramatically changed. This was because, by the time you get to elementary school, a natural hierarchy forms within the class. Ava, who was energetic, cute, and good at sports, belonged to the upper caste of the class. Though Ava and I were always in different classes, a kid who stands out in their class is recognized by students from other classes as well. In my class, just like in others, everyone thought of Ava as the cute and noticeable girl. On the other hand, I was, for better or worse, average. Not so unnoticed that I was forgotten, not particularly plain, but also nothing noteworthy. My grades, sports, and looks were all average, an ordinary existence. I was content with my place, as I didn't particularly want to stand out, but Ava started treating me with a bit of a superior attitude. She never said it directly, but I think she felt, "She's below me." Indeed, I was inferior to Ava, and it was natural to be seen that way. But, to be honest, I had found Ava bothersome since we were young, and my dislike for her only grew stronger. If we were in different classes, normally, we could have easily drifted apart like school friends would. But because our parents were close, we had to be together all the time. I even told my parents I didn't want to be with Ava, but they took it as teenage whimsy and didn't take me seriously. To our parents, who never had to deal with a troublesome childhood friend, the concept of disliking a childhood friend was non-existent. To my parents who think a lifelong childhood friend you're not related to is wonderful, my feelings were incomprehensible. I was destined to go to the nearby elementary and middle school. That meant I couldn't get away from Ava until high school, which seemed like an eternity away. I sighed every day. Then, one day, at the piano class Ava and I attended together, the performers for a competition were announced. Only the top 3, the skilled kids, were chosen to be members, and to my surprise, I was one of them. I originally started playing the piano because I liked it, but honestly, I had been feeling quite fed up ever since Ava said, "I want to play the piano too," and joined the same school. But all my hard work paid off. My efforts were rewarded. While I was filled with joy, a girl who participated in the last competition said to me, "Congratulations. That's amazing, Michelle." "Thank you," I replied with a big smile, when suddenly, Ava interjected, "Good for you, managing to do well in the only thing you're good at." The girl who congratulated me was taken aback by Ava's clearly barbed words, not knowing how to respond. Despite the atmosphere, Ava continued, "Aren't you worried about the competition, Michelle? It would be terrible if you wet yourself on stage, wouldn't it?" Ava said this with a sly grin. The word "wet yourself" triggered an excessive reaction from the kids around us. The celebratory mood turned into chaos with "EW, Michelle, you wet the bed?" Bedwetting was a story from kindergarten. I hadn't wet the bed since elementary school. But to kids, the truth doesn't really matter. If the topic at hand is amusing, they'll latch onto it. No matter how much I insisted, "I don't wet the bed anymore," the kids laughed, saying things like, "Still such a kid, huh," and "How embarrassing." Though the teacher intervened and settled things down, I continued to be teased about wetting the bed by the other kids. But I had a piano competition coming up. I was determined to prove myself with my skills.
"Michelle, let's play dodgeball." "Huh?"
Ava suggested, as usual, when she came over, bringing a classmate of hers along.
Come play with us. It's a game with kids from my class. You should join, Michelle. What? But I'm the only one from a different class, aren't I? You guys should play with kids from your own class.
I want to play with you, Michelle. Ava pleaded sweetly. Everyone said things like, you two really are close, huh, but honestly, it was an annoying invitation for me. I wanted to be away from Ava even for just a minute, but I couldn't find a way to decline properly. Somehow, I ended up joining a game with kids from another class. I would regret this decision later. Once the dodgeball game started, Ava's class, having many members from sports clubs, engaged in intense gameplay. Not being good at sports, I was desperate just to avoid getting hit. Then Ava shouted, Michelle. Catch the ball. Don't just run away. No way, I can't catch such a strong throw. I was confused, but Ava's words made the rest of the team chime in, Michelle. Now. You could have caught that one. Come on, catch it. Gradually becoming scared of the atmosphere, I reluctantly reached out for the ball but couldn't catch it properly. I was afraid of getting scolded for getting knocked out. Wondering what to do, when suddenly, Ava collided with me. Staggering from the unexpected impact, I fell to the ground in an awkward position, severely spraining my left wrist in the process. Meanwhile, Ava managed to catch the ball without needing to resort to such tactics.
Sorry, I got too caught up and bumped into you,
she said with a smile. Seems like not at all sorry. At first, I was too shocked to notice, but my wrist hurt terribly. Surrounded by Ava's classmates, I ended up leaving the game to go home and then to the hospital. The diagnosis revealed a fracture in my left wrist. 3 months to heal. It seemed unlikely I could participate in the piano competition. Seeing my wrist fixed in a cast up to my elbow, Ava said with a smirk, that's so unfortunate. Her face and words didn't match at all. I'm not the kind of person who doesn't notice when someone's face and words don't match up at all. I was convinced that Ava had invited me to play dodgeball with the intention of injuring me. It was frustrating not having proof of my suspicion. Why did my childhood friend have to be someone like her? Filled with a sense of helplessness, I cried alone in bed that night. I was no longer able to participate in the competition, and Ava was chosen as my replacement.
I'll do my best for both of us,
she said, looking genuinely pleased. Even though I was the one initially selected and Ava had been rejected, I swallowed any bitter words and simply responded, good luck. Afterward, there were occasional petty annoyances from Ava, but I started using studying as an excuse to reduce the time I spent with her. Our parents said, you don't have to study all the time, you're still a kid, enjoy playing too. But if I played with anyone else, somehow Ava would end up joining in. All because our houses were next to each other. She must have been keeping an eye on my activities. To avoid playing with Ava, I couldn't think of any other solution than not playing with anyone at all. Whether Ava actually liked me or hated me, I couldn't tell at all. But one thing became clear, she was becoming an increasingly annoying presence in my life. Feeling the rift between us growing, we entered middle school.
You have to join a club, Michelle, what are you gonna choose?
I'm thinking tennis.
Oh, then I'll do that too.
Ava naturally chose the same club as me. But I had anticipated this much. Later, I silently joined the home economics club, while Ava, believing what I said, joined the tennis club. I thought I had finally managed to distance myself. But within a week, Ava quit the tennis club and followed me into the home economics club. If you're going to change clubs, you should have told me, she said with a smile. Because of this, the other members of the home economics club misunderstood and thought Ava and I were close friends, and my attempts to distance myself from Ava were seen as cold. Frankly, Ava had orchestrated that perception. Still, becoming a middle schooler made me more determined not to be pushed around by Ava. I avoided walking to and from school with her as much as possible and stopped having meals together, using studying as an excuse. Of course, it was difficult to refuse every time because of our parents, but occasionally doing so made me feel much lighter. Now, all that was left was high school. It's unlikely my parents would allow me to go to a boarding school, but if I chose a school in the opposite direction from Ava, our interactions might decrease. I decided to work hard on my studies so I could go to any school I wanted. With this in mind, I began studying in the library after school on days when I didn't have club activities. At first, I was just studying, but as I frequented the library, a senior from the library committee, 2 years my senior, started talking to me. It seemed unusual for a freshman to come study there. I knew it was just consideration from an upperclassman, but I found myself drawn to his calm and caring nature. He was very helpful. And he made studying easy to understand. As we started talking more about each other, I, who had no interest in novels, began reading books he recommended. They say love can change a person, and it really is true. I think I was giddy with my first love. That's why I was off guard.
Huh? Michelle, you have business in the library too?
One afternoon, as I was heading to the library as usual, Ava was there. She acted as if it were a coincidence, but that couldn't be further from the truth. She must have been keeping an eye on my movements as always. Even knowing Ava was that kind of person, I lamented becoming so infatuated with the senior that I frequented the library, exposing my safe haven. Knowing my feelings, she said, "The library is nice, isn't it? So calming. Maybe I'll start coming here with Michelle." I wanted to scream, "Please don't." But then the senior appeared behind me and asked, "A friend of yours?" Before I could find the words, Ava replied with a smile, "We're childhood friends."
A childhood friend, huh? That's nice. I'm an only child, so I've always been a bit envious of that.
The senior said something like that, and before I knew it, their conversation was lively. It's my fault for not being able to interject, but I felt like my place was being taken away. It was depressing. True to her word, Ava started following me to the library from that day on. I knew that if I just studied in my room instead of going to the library, I could reduce my interactions with Ava. As much as I disliked Ava, I also wanted to see the senior's face just as badly. In the end, I kept going to the library, allowing Ava to invade my sanctuary. Then, one day,
Michelle, do you have someone you like?
Ava asked. In front of the senior, no less. Eh? My voice squeaked in surprise. A reaction Ava surely noticed immediately. I can still remember how her lips curled into a smirk. Noticing my discomfort, the senior asked Ava, "And what about you, Ava? Do you have someone you like?" Probably expecting her to shyly respond with something like, "I couldn't possibly say," and end the conversation there. But instead,
"Yes, right in front of me,"
she said, pointing at the senior. His face turned red instantly. I thought it was over. Ava looked at me with the same smirk as before. In hindsight, my affection for the senior was probably obvious to someone of the same sex. The senior never noticed, but being head over heels in love, I couldn't control my feelings. My face would turn red just talking to him, and my voice would squeak when he got close to look at my studies. For Ava, who had known me since we were little, figuring out my feelings was probably a piece of cake. Catchphrases, hobbies, club activities, possessions. She always wanted everything that was mine, even imitating me. Did she now want the person I liked as well? Feeling desperate, I watched as Ava asked the senior, "Will you go out with me?" The senior was flustered, saying, "I don't really know you that well," but a month later, they started dating. She even went out of her way to inform me about their relationship. I still think that if it was going to cause me so much pain, I should have never gone to the library. Afterward, I stopped going to the library, and it seemed like Ava had broken up with the senior too. Maybe she lost interest because I had given up on him. I focused more on my studies than ever before and eventually became a high school student. I had kept my preferred schools a secret from Ava, but my parents ended up spilling the beans, and I nearly ended up going to the same high school as her. However, Before the first day of high school, I deliberately changed schools where I want to go. I chose the school that Ava wasn't in. Ava threw a fit about going to the same high school as me, but since the school I chose had a bad reputation for having arrested students, her parents stopped her. Despite my parents' tears, I successfully managed to get away from Ava. Continuing my studies in high school, I got into a university with high standards and moved out of the state. I took precautions like telling my parents a false preferred school, so university was separate from Ava too. By the time we became working adults, we had both found jobs out of the state, never seeing each other again, and we finally became estranged. Eventually, I met a man at work and got married. I was living a smooth-sailing life, but during the first summer after our marriage. When I brought my husband to visit my hometown for Christmas, I ran into Ava for the first time in a long while. She was also married, and it seemed to be their rare return home too. Then, our parents suggested, since it's a rare occasion, let's have a family dinner together, resulting in a dinner with Ava and her husband, my husband and me, and our parents. I thought I could endure it for just one day. But half a year after Christmas, my husband's affair was discovered. And the other woman was Ava. How did I find out? I caught them in the act in our car parked in the driveway early in the morning. Apparently, they had exchanged contact information during that return home visit and had been meeting up occasionally since. Ava was currently separated from her husband and living nearby. According to my husband, he was the one who seduced her, but probably Ava had orchestrated it to be that way. She must have wanted something of mine again. They both said they had fallen seriously for each other and wanted a divorce, so I told them, you can have it your way, and the divorce was settled, not without me being furious. Afterward, I moved and changed jobs. I met a man who ran his own business, remarried. I had regained happy days with the birth of my child, but it was only for a short while. When my child started elementary school, I was frozen in shock at the entrance ceremony. Somehow, Ava was there. Bringing a child who looked just like my ex-husband, she cheerfully greeted me, "Oh, long time no see."
Why are you here?
I was stunned.
I wanted to apologize to you for taking your husband, and your parents told me where you were.
Ava replied. Needless to say, I was irritated with my parents. After divorcing my first husband and them knowing the reason, my parents had been on my side. But after I remarried and had a child, they slowly started wishing for a reconciliation because it's a shame, you've been childhood friends after all. I understand their feelings, but reconciliation is impossible after she stole my husband.
Looks like our kids are in the same class, so let's get along as mom friends from now on,
Ava said with a smile. Even though it was just the entrance ceremony, I secretly wished it was already the graduation ceremony. After that, Ava clung to me as a mom friend from childhood, inserting herself into gatherings of mom friends. But her essence hasn't changed, always subtly putting me down with comments like, "You've really aged since having a child," or "Your husband might fall out of love with you," given her history of stealing my husband, often subtly criticizing my femininity. Many mom friends, admiring Ava's communicative skills, left me with no room to argue back. I could have countered if it were just my problem, but I was worried about causing trouble for my child if there were rifts in the mom-friends relationships. Troublesomely, our community has close interactions among mom friends, with numerous events like family barbecues and camping trips. Dealing not just with Ava, but also my ex-husband was nothing but stress for me. Thankfully, my current husband knows about my past relationship with Ava. Having someone who understands by my side made a big difference. But then,
I fell in love, what can I say?
What? One day, my husband said he wanted to talk and asked me to make time when our child was at school. Ava showed up for this discussion as a relevant party. Apparently, they were currently having an affair. Again?
Why do you always take what's mine?
I confronted Ava, but she responded with, I fell in love, what can I say? It can't be helped, which was hardly an answer.
We're both serious about each other, so I want to divorce my current husband and remarry. Oh, want your ex-husband back?
Ava laughed.
I don't need him. You can have both men.
Really, huh? To think I would end up with such a husband, my condolences. But I'm not going to tell her the real reason. Thinking this, I answered with a smile, I'll grant you a divorce. A month later, Ava came to my house.
What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me?
What are you talking about? I feigned ignorance. As expected, Ava saw right through it and got angry. Don't play dumb.
Why didn't you tell me he was unemployed?
Do I need to?
You're remarrying because you truly fell in love, right? I wanted to see a bit of that I'll support him spirit. You knew and deliberately didn't tell me.
Of course.
We were already discussing divorce before you came asking for it. What?
Ava's eyes widened at my words.
He's not just unemployed, he's in debt trying to get his company back on track. We had a huge fight because I wasn't aware of that. You thought you won by taking my husband, but actually, I just handed over a husband I didn't need anymore.
Ava gasped in shock. What?
So, you knew and you still went ahead with claiming alimony and child support, besides suing for adultery?
Of course.
It's only natural that I claim what's rightfully mine. I don't appreciate being painted as the bad woman here. You're the worst.
You're one to talk.
Self-inflicted. You were planning to make him pay again, weren't you? But he doesn't have that kind of money anymore. You'll have to pay it yourself. You've ruined my life because of you. I'm grateful, thank you, for taking a husband who's on the verge of bankruptcy and cheats.
Me with a smile and Ava in tears. My ex-husband had passive income from investments, so even being sued by both of us for alimony, he could easily pay up. That's probably why Ava thought, once we're married, I'll just make my new husband pay everything. After all, she knew my current husband was self-employed and making decent money. She must have been counting on that. But her plans backfired. Not only was he unemployed, but he was also in debt and couldn't be relied upon. No wonder she wants to cry. Serves her right.
I got this house in the property division, but I plan to sell it and move. So what?
Ava looked at me with disdain, as if listening to me was the last thing she wanted. She still doesn't understand her situation. She acted as if she's superior. I'll show her hell right now.
I'm going to tell all the other mom friends about your misdeeds. What? I don't know if they'll side with me, but be prepared to be pointed at behind your back. I can just move if that happens. Silly you, don't you know your husband's personality? Husband? Which one? What are you talking about? I'm talking about my ex-husband. He's extremely jealous. If you mention divorce, you'll probably be stalked by him.
Just do your best, I added, and Ava was frozen in shock. Switching to another man and being discarded, he wouldn't stand for it. I'm looking forward to what comes next. With that, I ignored the stunned Ava and went back to my home. Ava kept pressing the intercom, pleading, please reconsider the alimony, but I completely ignored her. Afterward, just before I moved out, flyers were spread around the neighborhood. It revealed Ava's affairs. They even detailed her history with men. For the record, I didn't do it. However, since the flyers described what was happening inside Ava's home, it's certain my first ex-husband was behind it. Despite being eligible to remarry 6 months after the divorce, Ava remained unmarried. She had paid me alimony and child support in cash. Because her second husband had declared bankruptcy. She might have intended to start over with Ava from scratch, but then the flyer incident happened. The second husband, after learning all about Ava's past with men, abandoned her. Ava might have intended to abandon him first, but being left first seemed to have hit her hard. Her once cute appearance had become harsh and her temperament had grown rougher from constant irritation. Her parents, seeing Ava's living conditions and demeanor, decided she wasn't fit for parenting, and the child was raised by her grandparents. Those who had been close to Ava, now without a child, saw her not even as a mom friend anymore. Moreover, her free-spirited private life had shocked them. Vandalism and harassment towards Ava's home increased, and she was told to leave the area. Even if she wanted to move, it seemed she had no money, and though she would have wanted to sue over the flyers, money was always an issue. Additionally, my first ex-husband was still obsessing over Ava. Ava, aiming for a financial reunion, found that her ex wasn't foolish. "I want to show you my true self, so no remarriage," he said, ensuring Ava couldn't find a new man by constantly watching over her. Truly creepy. Meanwhile, I moved out of the state with my child, now striving as a single mother. I've had enough of marriage, so from now on, I'll live focusing on my son. As I've gotten older and lost some of my grip strength, he opens jars for me and gives me massages when I'm exhausted. He's grown into a truly kind child. Thanks to Ava, my luck with men might have been dreadful, but in a sense, I've been lucky with men regarding my son. It's a bit different from the usual meaning. We're not wealthy, nor am I a career woman, just ordinary days. But for me, who has gone through so much, life with my son and 3 cats is warmer and happier than any other time I've lived. Since then, Ava hasn't appeared before me. Well, she's probably traumatized, and with my first husband watching, she can't make any careless moves. Finally, I feel like I've achieved true happiness. Alright, shall I wake up early tomorrow to make lunch for my son? Let's keep up the good work.